The hallway reeked of mold and stale cigarette smoke, every step echoing like a warning in the silence. Mailboxes overflowed with dust-covered envelopes. Behind one rusted door, a drawer slid open by itself. Inside, 10 silicone fingers, each one stamped with a perfect human fingerprint. Back when I was working sales at this small used car lot on the edge of the city, I used to pull the overnight shifts, dead quiet most nights. Just me, a vending machine humming behind the glass, and the low hum of streetlights buzzing like static in the air. One night, around 1 a.m., a man in a tailored charcoal suit strolled in. Slicked back hair, leather gloves, that cologne-heavy kind of scent that smells expensive but artificial. He didn't look like the kind of guy who'd ever buy a used car, but he stayed and talked. We smoked outside by the dumpster, said he worked in imported goods, which sounded vague as hell, but the way he talked about high-end watches and bags, it was like he had a catalog memorized in his head. Before he left, he leaned in and told me about a place, not a store, more like a private showroom, where you could get real designer stuff for next to nothing. No names, no addresses, just a set of directions and a half smile like he knew he was dropping something heavy. I didn't think much of it at the time, but a week later, curiosity got the better of me. I followed his directions, ended up in a part of town that looked like time forgot it. Cracked sidewalks, sagging utility poles, faded paint peeling from brick. The place he mentioned was tucked between a payday loan office and a shuttered laundromat. 2 stories, no sign. Just a rusted buzzer and windows blacked out with paper. When I stepped inside, the air changed. It was heavy, thick with something metallic, like wet coins and old dust. Refrigerators and washing machines lined the walls, but none of them looked like they'd ever been plugged in. A small staircase in the back creaked as I climbed it, leading to a second floor packed with clutter. Faded lamps, chipped teacups, tangled jewelry. Nothing about it screamed luxury, and I was about to leave when a man in a gray uniform quietly slid a door open behind a curtain. Said if I was looking for something special, I'd need to sign in, membership only, personal details required. I hesitated. He didn't blink. The room behind him? Dark. Just a sliver of fluorescent light glowing from below. Something about the way he stood there, calm as a shadow, made the hair on my arms rise. I gave the guy my information. Name, birthday, address, even signed a weird consent form that felt more like a contract than a membership. No copies, no receipts. He just nodded and slipped it into a drawer without a word. Then he motioned for me to follow him. We walked through a narrow hallway lit by flickering ceiling lights that buzzed just a little too loud. The walls were stained with something dark near the floorboards, and the air smelled like cold stone mixed with mildew and old paper. We came to a thick steel door at the end. He slid a magnetic keycard through a hidden slot and opened it. A narrow staircase spiraled down, concrete steps wet with condensation, like the walls were sweating. The deeper we went, the colder it got. My breath started to fog up, and the back of my neck felt damp. It didn't smell like a basement. It smelled like something had been sealed down there for a long time and forgotten. At the bottom was another door, this one made of glass so clean it almost wasn't there. Behind it, a room glowed in soft, sterile white light, the so-called luxury showroom. Inside were glass cases filled with designer watches, handbags, jewelry, every item placed with surgical precision, like it had been arranged by someone with OCD and a measuring tape. But the room was dead silent. No music, no cameras, no price tags, no other customers. The attendant, same gray uniform, no name tag, stood beside me like a statue, offering no help unless I asked. I picked up a Rolex, the coldness of the metal biting into my fingertips. It looked real, felt real, but there was something off about the weight, like it had a hollow core. Every item I touched gave me that same wrong feeling. The leather straps smelled synthetic. The gold looked a little too polished, too untouched. I asked how to buy something. The The man said they'd take my request and contact me when my match arrived. That word stuck with me. Match. Like the item wasn't for sale until it had found the right person. No credit cards, no browsing online, only one visit per person unless invited back. When I left, the attendant pressed a small card into my palm, blank except for a phone number scrawled in thin, shaky handwriting. He told me someone would reach out if my request was accepted. Then he closed the door, and I climbed back up alone. Weeks passed. I almost forgot about it until one night a regular customer came by the lot. A guy I remembered well because he always wore the same faded navy hoodie and asked too many questions about gas mileage. This time, he was wearing a Louis Vuitton backpack, the real deal. I asked where he got it. He paused, looked around like he wasn't supposed to say, and said it was a lucky find from a boutique downtown. His voice cracked a little. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. A month later, he vanished. His number stopped working. No response to emails. I figured maybe he'd skipped town or something, until another client, one who'd talked about getting a cheap Rolex, disappeared too. That made 3. All of them had mentioned that place in passing. All of them lived alone. I drove to the last guy's apartment, run-down complex near an old industrial park. The parking lot was half empty, covered in weeds. His car was still there, dusty, tires flat. Looked like it hadn't moved in weeks. The mailbox stuffed with overdue notices. I slipped into the building. The halls were dim and smelled like damp carpet and stale air. His door was cracked open. Inside, the apartment looked untouched. TV still plugged in. A plate of food on the counter, now moldy. It was like he'd just walked out in the middle of something and never came back. No signs of a struggle, but nothing packed either. I checked the drawers. Bills, receipts, old pictures. But when I opened a small metal cabinet near the front closet, my stomach turned. Inside were silicone fingers, 5 of them, each one labeled with a name on masking tape. The labels were neat, written in tiny block letters. I recognized 2 of the names immediately. They were both clients. The fingers looked disturbingly real. The fingerprints etched into them were too detailed to be fake. I touched one, and it bent just slightly, like it still held body heat. Beneath them were a few forms, photocopies of government IDs, notarized statements, legal-looking stuff, and every document had a fingerprint mark where the signature should have been. I stepped back, trying to breathe, but the air felt thicker now. My mouth was dry. I could hear something upstairs, a soft thump, like someone dragging a chair or pacing slowly. But the building was supposed to be empty. I froze. The hallway outside creaked. A door down the hall clicked shut. I left everything where it was and walked out without looking back. As I reached my car, I realized my hands were shaking. The sun had set, and the street was darker than I remembered, like the shadows were stretching just a little longer than they should. My phone buzzed as I started the engine. Unknown number. 1 text. Your match is ready. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in my car, parked outside a 24-hour diner, replaying everything in my head. The silicone fingers, the missing clients, that single cold message. Your match is ready. It was 3:14 a.m. when I made the decision. I wasn't going to wait. I called the number on that card. 1 ring, then silence. No tone, no voice, just a faint humming noise, like an old refrigerator running in a distant room. I hung up, but my phone immediately buzzed again with a new message. No words, just an address and a time. 4:30 a.m. I don't even remember the drive. Just the feeling of the steering wheel slipping under my sweaty palms and the sharp pinch in my gut, like my body already knew something was wrong. The sky was black, that kind of empty dark that makes the world feel hollow. The address led me to a different part of town. Old warehouses, dead streetlights, broken glass crunching under my tires. The building I stopped in front of looked abandoned, but a single red light glowed above the doorway, pulsing like it was breathing. Inside, everything smelled like rust and damp wood. The air was humid, thick with something that clung to the back of my throat. I followed a narrow corridor lined with exposed pipes dripping water that echoed like a ticking clock. At the end was a freight elevator, door already open. A small panel inside only had one button. No numbers, no labels. I pressed it, and the doors slid shut with a sound like metal grinding against bone. The elevator dropped fast, too fast. My stomach rose into my chest. The light above flickered, casting long, twitching shadows along the walls. When it stopped, the doors opened into a room that didn't match anything above. It was pristine, silent. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. White floors, white walls, glass panels, but everything was wrong. There was no furniture, no displays, just a long black table in the center with a single item resting on top. A mirror, but not a normal mirror. When I stepped up to it, my reflection didn't follow. I stood still, but the man inside the mirror tilted his head, blinked, and then smiled. Not my smile, something thinner, crooked, predatory. My lungs clenched. I stumbled back. That's when I noticed the walls weren't walls. They were glass, two-way maybe, and behind them, barely visible, were rows and rows of shelves. And on those shelves, shapes, bodies, lined up like mannequins, pale, still, some missing arms, others missing faces. One shelf had nothing but hands, some real, some silicone, all tagged. A soft static crackled from a speaker above. "Do you accept your match?" I turned. There was no speaker in sight, just the voice, calm and slow, like a doctor reading off a list of symptoms. Then I heard a soft sliding sound. The far wall shifted open, revealing another room, dimly lit, almost surgical. Inside was a chair, a leather chair strapped with dark belts. Next to it, a stainless steel tray holding scalpels, pliers, needles, and something that looked like a bone saw. I backed away, but the elevator door was gone, just a blank wall now. I slammed my fists against it. Nothing. No sound but my own breath, loud and ragged. Then footsteps. Slow, even, echoing from the hallway I'd just entered. The light above me dimmed. I turned and saw him. The man from the mirror. Same face, same clothes, but wrong. His skin had no pores, like wax warmed just enough to move. His eyes were too dark. He didn't blink. He walked right up to me, close enough to see my own terrified face reflected in his irises. Then he whispered, voice like dry leaves scraping across concrete. "You're not needed anymore." The ground tilted. My vision went white for a second. I heard a high-pitched tone, like a knife against glass, slicing through my ears. When I came to, I was outside. Back in my car. The sun was rising. The building was gone. Just a fenced-off lot overgrown with weeds. No red light. No door. No elevator. The only sign it happened was the card in my hand. Still there. Still warm. Still blank. And the worst part? My reflection in the rearview mirror blinked a full second after I did. I tried going back the next day. Drove straight to where that warehouse should have been. Nothing. Just a chain-link fence wrapped in dead vines and a lot filled with broken concrete and rusted cans. No red light, no doorway, not even a foundation. It was like the building had been peeled out of reality, like it was never there to begin with. But my phone still held that one message, time-stamped, staring back at me like a bruise under the skin. "Your match is ready." I started noticing little changes. My reflection kept moving wrong, like it was a few frames behind. Sometimes it wouldn't blink when I did. One night, I caught it smiling before I did. I don't look at mirrors anymore. I keep them covered, but it's not just that. My fingerprints don't scan at the ATM anymore. My driver's license shows a slightly different photo. Same clothes, same pose, but the eyes are too wide. My voice-to-text apps transcribe sentences I don't remember saying. And lately, people I've known for years pause when they see me, like something in their head glitches for a split second. Then they smile and act normal, but their eyes won't meet mine. At night, I hear scratching behind the walls. Not mice. It's too slow, deliberate, like someone tracing lines into the plaster with a fingernail. I've started locking the door to my bedroom, even though I live alone. Sometimes I wake up and the door's wide open. I've stopped wondering how. I just stare at the mirror across the room, where something in the glass still stands long after I've turned away. It doesn't wave, it doesn't move, it just waits. Somewhere out there, that showroom might still exist, tucked between forgotten alleys or stitched between addresses that don't show up on any map. Someone else might be getting their invitation right now, drawn in by the promise of something rare, something meant just for them. And maybe, just like me, they'll walk out thinking they escaped. But the changes come slow, a reflection that lingers too long, a friend forgetting your name mid-sentence, documents showing details you never gave. Maybe the version of me that walked out wasn't the one who walked in. Maybe I left something behind, something that's still watching, still learning how to be me better than I ever could.